Welcome. Greater light. I got to tell this story, Coppertone, before I get started. I'm going to tell you this. Every place that I've lived, there's always been an animal that presents itself and keeps coming to our door, right? So my total recall just went where one time it was a bat. This is when we were living in Savannah. There was a bat at our door. Then, um, I don't know if anybody who been around or with me this long or that long remember when I was in Georgia and I would be going live, and one week it was a praying mantis. Praying mantis kept right at the front door. So what I did is I ended up taking it in as trying to raise it as a pet, but it didn't survive. Um the next time the last time it was the scarab. My son-in-law took the scarab and put it all the way, I'm talking about near the pool area, and it kept coming back to the front door. So I brought it in and took it in. So I was like, dog. So this week it's this frog. One frog. It's a bunch of frogs in the pond back there, but it's just one frog. Just kept coming to the door. And my daughter, there's definitely is scared of frogs. I'm not afraid of frogs. And then I know from growing up, if you put salt, that would, you know, get rid of the frog. Yeah, I could use, yeah, it'll kill the frog. It'll kill the frog. So I didn't want to pour salt on the frog this morning. I just because my daughter don't like frogs, I definitely couldn't take it in. But it's just a whole week of the frog coming back and like sleeping at our door. And when she opens the door, he's right there. So she called and this morning, and I was like, "Oh, he's transitioned," but I didn't do the salt yet. I hadn't did the salt yet. I said he transitioned. So I guess because she slammed the door so fast, she's like, "I'm tired of this frog." I I was like, "Don't worry about." But I went and tried to get him to go back to the pond area. So I said, "Well, I just sprinkle a little salt in front of the door, and hopefully, it'll just keep him away." So she just coming back in a little while ago. She's like, "I guess I don't know. The frog is gone." I was like, "Well, okay." Yeah, he all stretched out by the side of the door. I was like, "Oh no, I didn't want the frog to die." But it's just something. That's just something that a reoccurring event. And yeah, did you know that bats live in Savannah? In certain parts of Georgia, what caves do these bats come from? Oh, really? Really? A lot of times people be out in the night and think it's birds and stuff, and it's bats at the seaport. All right. All right. I didn't get to raise that back then, but I just felt like I'd tell that story before I get started. Before I get started, here we go. I'm just sharing right now. I'm not going to talk about anything else with the government and stuff until a little later. Here we go. Greater light, greater light.
By Elliot Kaplan in honor of his father and in loving memory of his father, Reb Naftali Hertz, Ben Reb Aaron HaKoyen, in tribute to his 26th yahrzeit on the first day of Tammuz, Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. May his neshama have an aliyah, tehei nishmas tzura b'tzar hachayim, and continue to be a source of blessing and inspiration and light to you and the entire family and all of the Jewish people. Thank you. We know that names in Yiddishkeit, names in Judaism have a lot of significance. In fact, the Gemara says in Yuma that Reb Meir have a dayak b'shma. Reb Meir, one of the greatest sages, he would analyze names. In other words, when he heard the name of somebody, for him it was extremely telling and meaningful. We know that Adam Arishan, one of the first things he did as a human being was he conferred names upon all of the animals. Vayikra Adam Shemus. It's a big deal of calling names. A donkey is a donkey, and a camel is a camel, and a horse is a horse. But the truth is, the Medrash says that this was Hashem's way of proving to the angels that Adam was wiser than them. Because names in Lashon Kodesh, names in Hebrew are not just incidental. Meaning this is a table, and this is a lectern, and this is a cup, and this is a telephone, and this is a beam. But rather, the names are considered essential to the things that have that name. Because, and this is explained in many Svarim, that the letters of the Hebrew alphabet are the building blocks of creation. It's the inner chemistry of creation. So that the letters that make up a thing's name define the shape and the character of its soul, of its divine life force, its divine DNA. The DNA of it is the name of it in Lashon Kodesh. So Adam needed a lot of wisdom to be able to give any animal a name. You can't just call a horse a chamor and a camel and a donkey a sus. The word mayim, the name mayim, defines the inner spiritual chemistry of mayim. 2 mems and a yud. Because what is a drop of water? It's basically H2O, right? You have 2 atoms of hydrogen and oxygen, and together it makes up the molecule called water. So you have a mem and a yud. So the inner spiritual chemistry, the divine DNA, which results in the physical chemistry, is always connected to the name of something. That's why the Arizal says that when parents choose a name for a child, there's a ruach hakodesh, there's a flow of divine inspiration that gets implanted in their minds, even though they think we had all these calculations and I like this name, I don't like this name, etc. And sometimes grandparents like to mix in, but there's really no need for it because parents have a ruach hakodesh when it comes to giving a name. Even though halachically every person is the owner of their own name, so people can change their names later in life, as sometimes people do. However, and that's also the reason why when someone chas v'shalom falls ill, very ill, there's a custom sometimes to add a name because the name is a channel of, it's not just a name. So you have a name, there's a Chaya and Dvaida and Matel and Sprinza and Sarah and Rivka Rachalea, beautiful names, but it's that the name is also a channel for the soul's energy into the body, and that's why in illness they'll sometimes add a name to, so to speak, open up new channels of divine energy. I say this because today we're going to focus on a name, and it's the name of a person, one of the very famous characters in Jewish history, pretty infamous character, and not only the name of a prominent person, but he even had the merit that his name, his personal name, became the name of an parsha, Korach. Korach is a name like many other names, and Korach is the central figure in this Parshas Korach. He's the one who stages very successful and major revolt. Well, initially successful, at the end not very successful, but stages initially a very successful revolt against Moshe and Aaron, manages to mobilize 250 leaders in this mutiny, as the Torah clearly says. And his main complaint, his main lamentation to Moshe and Aaron is, you have taken too much power. That's the opening of Korach. He says to them, the entire community is sacred. All the Jews are holy. Why are you exalting yourself? Why are you setting yourself apart, higher, more sublime? Tisnasu, from the word hisnasus, you exalting yourself on the community of Hashem. But I want to focus on his name, Korach. Now you would think, why are we focusing on his name? Why is that significant? As we just learned, a name is extremely significant. And the fact that Meir would make judgment calls based on names, obviously he knew how to see what's in a name, because sometimes you can have 2 people the same name, they obviously have different personalities. So the Gemara is the first one that makes this connection, very interesting connection. The word Korach is the same letters like Kuf, Reish, Ches. Anybody knows Hebrew? What is ice? One axle. What else? Baldness. A bald person in Hebrew is called Kireach. Karachat is boldness. I have a karachat, I'm bold. The Torah says, Lo yikruchu karcha. One of the pagan customs was when somebody would die, they would what's the word? But in English, yeah.
When he was running?
Huh? Yeah, they would make themselves bald. They would literally tear out the hair of their heads. What's the medical condition called? The tricha. Right. So trichotillomania? Right. Yeah. So they would actually, as a sign of grief, it wasn't just a habit, as a sign of grief, they would pull out their hair. It says, La yikruchu karcha. This is not something the Kohanim or other Jews should do, karcha. So the word kairach is kerach, ice. It's a name kairach, but it's kireach, it's bald. Now, what would be the connection between all of this? So the Gemara says, this is your first source, Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Tes Amud Beis, Tractate Sanhedrin, page 109. Rish Lakish says, you know why he's called kairach? Shenase karcha b'Yisrael. Kairach alludes to the fact that because of him, a boldness was created among the Jewish people. What does it mean a boldness was created among the Jewish people? The Gemara doesn't explain. One way of explaining it, this is what Rashi says, is because he was swallowed up. And Dasan and Aviram was swallowed up by the earth. So as a result of that, when you have a bald spot, hair is missing. So these Jews were now missing because they were swallowed up, like they disappeared. So this space became like bald, empty, devoid of these people. That's how you would literally explain it. Obviously, it's difficult to understand because why is this alluded to the fact that it's called baldness? It's like you ripped out the hair. I mean, why they compare it to hair? And it was, relatively speaking, it was Kairach and Dasan and Aviram and their own. It wasn't so many people. It's not like there were other plagues and other pandemics and other situations where many, many more people died. And yet, those people are not called karcha. There were other plagues caused by other people. They're not called kairach. And even if you want to call them this name kairach because of this, why is it a metaphor of boldness? There could be many other names. So obviously, there's something here about kairach that is connected to karcha. He created a boldness in the Jewish people. Another very interesting thing. The Gemara says there in Sanhedrin, a page later, page 110, Amar Rav said, your second source. Somebody who holds on to machloikis, to fighting, to disputations, to quarreling, to bickering, actually transgresses a prohibition of the Torah. The Torah says in this week's parsha, one should not be like Kairach and his people. So therefore, anyone who holds on to machloikis is violating this mitzvah. Do not be like Kairach. The commentators ask, Kairach's issue wasn't just that he made a machlokes, it was what the machlokes was about. It was a machlokes against Moshe and Aaron. As the Gemara says, that till today the children of Kairach, they scream Moshe emes, v'Torasei emes. So how does the Gemara learn from here? Moshe, kol ha'machzik b'machlokes, any machlokes I'm involved in, I'm like Kairach. Well, you have to ask, what's the machlokes about? It sounds like that Kairach's essential issue was machlokes. He already found what? He fought against Moshe, he fought against Aaron, but essentially, Kairach represented machloikas. Machloikas comes from the word chaluka, which means to split, lechalek. You create a split. Which gives us a little insight into the idea of boldness, because what is really bold, right? Karcha is, again, you separate. If I tear my hair out of my head, I'm separating, I'm plucking the hair out, and now the hair is disconnected. Obviously, it can't grow anymore. It's like when you cut your hair, the hair is not growing. It's not connected anymore to the body, and therefore not connected to the nervous system, and not connected to life. So Kairach, again, creates this boldness, which is machlokes, and we say anyone who holds on to any machlokes is like Kairach. Regardless what? It seems a little strange. Obviously, Kairach somehow is essentially connected to the very notion of a machlokes, of a split. What does this mean? But why? You would seem like he's focused on a particular debate, particular argument, Moshe and Aaron. You look at the same line, it's really a third source. There should have been a space there. Noyam Elimelech, Parshas Kairach. The Sefer Noyam Elimelech, by the great master Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhensk, the Rebbe Melech, he writes in Kairach, Vayikach Kairach v'tirgumay v'ispelek Kairach. The opening of the parsha is Vayikach Kairach. Kairach took. What did he take? So the Targum says, the Onkelos says, v'ispelek Kairach. Kairach split. He split himself off. He took himself away from the group and he went to a side. So let's say we're all standing together and I separate and I create v'ispeleg, from the word peluga, like half. He separates himself. Vayikach, he took himself. Rashi quotes this also. He separates himself. He takes himself away from the cohesive group. So now there is a split. I'm on this side, and the other people are on this side. Says the Noam Elimelech, Nirali bahaktim lefarish posiki hirakia b'saychamayim. He compares it to the event that happens right in the beginning of creation. The Medrash asks a fascinating question. Every day of creation, Hashem says, the Torah says Hashem saw what he made and it was good. The first day he created light, Vayara Elokim Esa'ar, he saw the light was good. Every day it says he saw what he did, Vayara Elokim, Hashem saw what he did, V'hinei Tov, it was good. Besides Monday. Monday, there's no good. What happened? What happened to Monday? It was a bad day. People don't like Monday. That's why people don't like Monday, right? Got to go back to work, unless you work Sunday too. In my job, we work Shabbos too. We like Monday sometimes. Why doesn't it say Tov Monday? What happened? So the Medrash says, Shabai Nivras Machlaikas. The first Machlaikas happened on Monday. First fight. Who fought on Monday? There were no people to fight. You got to have people to fight. No, you have to have somebody to fight. There were no animals even to fight. Who's fighting? The answer is, what happened on Monday? Hashem said, Yehi rakia b'soicha mayim v'mavdil ben mayim l'mayim. On Sunday, the first day was all water, everything enveloped by water. The second day, he says, let there be a firmament inside the middle of the water, separating the water. So there's the water above the rakia, above the sky, and there's the water under the sky. That's the first split, machlokes in history. It doesn't say taiv. God doesn't say good. So now you have water above, you have water on bottom. It's called mayim elyonim, mayim tachtonim, higher water, lower water. And in fact, Chazal say, mayim tachtonim boichem. The lower waters are crying. Why were we expelled? Anam be'in lemeve kadamalka. Chazal say they're crying. We want to be in front of the king. Baruch kvoid Hashem mimkoimai is the acronym boichem. Baruch kvoid Hashem starts with a yud mimkoimai is beis chaf yud mem boichem. They're crying. They want to be up because there was a separation. There was a machlokes. So you have the higher water. You have the lower water. That happened on Monday. What happens on Tuesday? Hashem says, let the lower waters retreat into oceans and rivers and seas and lakes and ponds so that dry land can emerge. That's what happens on Tuesday. And on Tuesday, he also creates all the vegetation, all the produce. And Tuesday, it says Kitov twice. Why Kitov twice? Once for Monday, once for Tuesday. But you said Monday was machlokes. So the Pshat explained that the idea is that on Tuesday, the machlokes of Monday gets fixed. You can ask if Hashem is upset about machlokes, so you create it, and then you say, oh, it's not good. It was a bad day. Sorry. The idea is that Tuesday is a repair for Monday as well. The fascinating thing is the Ramban says that the 6 days of creation correspond to the 6 millennia of history. And the creations of each day, Sunday through Friday, correspond to what will occur in history during those 1,000 years. So the first Sunday is what corresponds to the first 1,000 years, which was the era of Adam HaRishon. Adam HaRishon almost lived 1,000 years, 900 and change. The second century, the second millennium is the second day of creation. The third millennium is the third day. When was Matan Torah? The Torah was given in the year 2448 since creation. In other words, the third millennium, almost 500 years into the third millennium. In fact, Avram Avinu was born 1948. Don't confuse it with 1948 Israel. That's 1948 CE. This is 1948 since creation. But Avram was born 1948, which means 52 years before the year 2000. So Avram Avinu already begins almost the third millennium. Shnei Alafim Torah. The third millennium begins with Avram because he's born a few decades before the beginning of the third millennium. So Avram Avinu, the first Jew, and Matan Torah will live during the third millennium. 2448 is the third millennium. What was the idea of Matan Torah? Torah is the Tuesday of history. It's like the Tuesday of creation. There's a fascinating medrash that highlights the connection. Take a look at your next source. Shmois Rabbah Perik Yud Beis. Mashal l'mahad avadayma. There's a metaphor. L'melech shegazav amar bnei roimi le'yerdu l'surya bnei surya le'yaru le'roimi. There was a king who made a decree and said, those who live in Rome may not descend to Syria, and those who live in Syria may not ascend to Rome. He closed the borders between Syria and Rome. Says the Medrash, this is a metaphor. When Hashem created the world, Gazav Amar, he made a decree. And he said, Hashemayim Shemayim L'Hashem V'aretz Nas Livnei Adam. Heaven is for God, and earth is for humans. There's a split. The Syrians shall not go to Rome, the Romans shall not go to Syria. Heaven shall not go down to earth, and earth shall not come up to heaven. When he wanted to give the Torah, he nullified the original decree. The lower ones may ascend to the higher realities, and the higher ones may descend to the lower reality. So this gzeira means a decree. The word gzeira in Hebrew actually means a split, like ligzor is to split. Because there was a split, there was a gezer. When you cut, it's called gezer, gzeira. Ligzor is to cut, to sever. So there was a gzeira. The two worlds were severed, the higher reality and the lower reality. El Yoinim and Tachtainim. He compares it to Rome and Syria, because Roimi comes from the word Roim. Roim means aloof, sublime, exalted. So that's why he said the people of Syria cannot go up to Rome. Those in Rome cannot descend to Syria. That's a mashal for what the world looked like. There was the higher reality, the lower reality, and they can't meet. There's a decree, there's a split. What's the chiddush? What's the novelty of Matan Torah? The lower ones can go up, the higher ones can go down. So we see that the Tuesday of history, the Tuesday of the third millennium, is similar to the Tuesday of creation. On Monday, there was a split between the higher water and the lower water. On Tuesday, we say the split gets healed. We have to understand how it gets healed. And that's why it says toiv, ki toiv twice. In the millennia of history, as it's projected, as the 6 days of creation are projected in millennia, each one 1,000 years, we have the same concept. Till Tuesday, till Matan Torah, there is a split. And in the middle of the third day, Matan Torah, 2448 since creation, Hashem says the higher and the lower can connect. So the split between the higher water and the lower water, whatever that represents, we will see, can come together. Now we say, the Noam Elimelech says, that Korach's machlokes was like the machlokes of Monday. What's the connection? Korach fought against Moshe and Aaron. It was a power struggle. He did not like that they had so much power. He wanted the power. So the Noam Elimelech says, no, it's like the first Monday of creation. When he took himself away and he split himself off the rest of the people. And Moshe and Aaron, it was like the split of Monday. Yehirakia, separating the water. But what do we see from here? That Korach's machlokes was not just an individual fighter, but a particular issue. Korach embodies the very theme of machlokes because somehow his machlokes is connected to the first split in history. And that's why the Gemara says anyone who holds on to a machlokes is essentially perpetuating Korach. Because it wasn't just a fight about an issue, it was the very concept of machlokes. But what does all of this mean and how does it connect? How does it connect to the story? In fact, the Panim Yafis writes that the gematria of Korach is machlokes with the word ra. The gematria of Korach, mem, ches, lamet, kuf, sof, together with ra, he says that's the gematria machlokes. That's Korach. Now we said, karcha means I separate the hair from the body. So again, there's machlokes. But what's the connection with separating the hair from the body? Karcha. So all of this needs to be understood, needs to be explained. And in order to appreciate this, I'm going to bring in another story here, which seems very strange at first glance. One of the greatest sages of his day was a man named Ben Azai. He was named after his father, Ben Azai, the son of Azai. That's how we know him, Ben Azai. And he is considered one of the greatest of the great. In fact, the Mishnah says in Saita that when he passed away, Mishameis ben Azai batlu hashakdonim. The person who really, what you would call in Yiddish, a steiger, was gone. In other words, Rabbi ben Azai's diligence and commitment to learning was unparalleled. It was unique. In one of the Gemaras, Ben Azai is discussing a doubt that he had about the time when you have to tithe animals, called Maisa Behema. And he couldn't resolve the issue, so he was accepting different views, different perspectives, because he didn't know which one to choose. And the Gemara is astonished by the fact that he couldn't figure it out. Why? Why is it astonishing? Because of something he once said. And this is the next quote. B'chayris daf nun ches amud aleph. B'chayris, page 58a. V'hatanya, we have learned. Ben Azai Omer, Ben Azai says, Kol chachme Yisrael doimen alai keklipas hashum chutz min hakireya chaza. All the sages of Israel appear to me to be like the peel of garlic, besides the bald one. Whoa. Now, literally, on a very, very surface level, he's being dismissive. In other words, the intellect of all the sages seems very unimpressive to me. It's like the garlic peel. It doesn't capture my curiosity, my inquisitiveness, my mind. There's one bald guy who gets to me. He gets to me. This kireach, he's already not the peel of a garlic. Now, why is the Gemara bringing it out? The Gemara is trying to bring out how Ben Azai, how confident he was in his own understanding, and how much he felt that he has the authority to be able to figure out what's right and what's wrong. And yet, in this particular issue, he was confused. That's the discussion. But first of all, who's this bald man? Who's besides this bald guy? Who's this bald guy? You ever heard such a conversation? He's sitting. It's one of the greatest sages. I'm not impressed by anybody, but that bald guy, ooh. So Rashi says, take a look in Rashi. Chutz min hakireya chaza dahainu Rabbi Akiva. He's referring to Rabbi Akiva. Apparently, Rabbi Akiva was bald. So he says, everybody is the peel of garlic, besides the bald guy. V'ha de garsinam bekuli hashas Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha hainu ben shel Rabbi Akiva. One of the famous sages mentioned in Mishnayos and Gemara is Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. Karcha means baldness. As we said, who is it? Rabbi Akiva. We know Rabbi Akiva had a son by the name of Rabbi Yeshua. That's clearly in Mishnayos. Rabbi Yeshua and his father, Rabbi Akiva, had a conversation. But when he's called Ben Karcha, it's also Rabbi Akiva, because his father was bald. So Rabbi Yeshua, the son of baldness. I want to ask you a question. Is this the way Ben Azai speaks about Rabbi Akiva? Even not Rabbi Akiva, even a regular person, right? You say, everyone impresses me besides that bald guy. It's not a way to refer to somebody, any person. It's disrespectful. It's dismissed. And even if it was done in good humor and jest, sometimes people will, generally there's a prohibition to give nicknames to people that are embarrassing. But if it's not to embarrass the person, it's like b'dichusa, sometimes humorly. It's not prohibited, but still. Why would Ben Azai refer to Rabbi Akiva when he's trying to actually elevate? He'd say, chutz Rabbi Akiva. And why did they identify the baldness of Rabbi Akiva? That was the definition of Rabbi Akiva, he's bald. And then they decide to call Rabbi Yeshua the son of baldness. What's that about? That becomes his name. His father is the bald guy. And who's his father? It's not like his father. Maybe sometimes you have a father. You have a father that you're not so proud of. Fine, you don't want to say the name. And we have that concept. Elisha ben Avuya, they changed his name to Acher, the other one, the alien. Because of what happened to him, he became a heretic. But here his father's Rabbi Akiva. Call him Rabbi Yeshua ben Rabbi Akiva. No. And also, if you want to talk about his baldness, say Rabbi Yeshua ben Hakireach, not ben Karcha. Karcha is a noun, baldness. You're talking about a person. He's not the son of baldness. He's the son of somebody who was bald. What his baldness gave birth to him. It's very strange. What's the beginning of his statement? All the sages are like garlic peel. What's that supposed to mean? Even if you want to bring out that you disagree, fine. So say, I disagree. I think they got it wrong many times. I have a different perspective. What's this name? The peel of a garlic. I mean, why not the peel of a banana, if we're already talking about peels? Why not the peel of an orange? I don't know why the peel of a watermelon. Dafka garlic from everything. Why not like garlic? They're like garlic. No, they're klipas Hashem. It's such a strange thing that Tosfos asks the question. You see in the end of the line, Tosfos, Misani le lahaskir Rabbi Akiva b'shmoy shemaskire b'loshen gnai. Did Ben Azai have such issues with Rabbi Akiva that he loathes to call him by his name and therefore he has to call him with a disgraceful name? I don't understand. And you know what the real question, the even bigger question is? Who do you think, when Ben Azai got married, who do you think he married? Exactly! He was Rabbi Akiva's son-in-law, for heaven's sake. Now, I want to see your reaction when your son-in-law does this at the Shabbos table to your husband. The Gemara says in Ksuvah Samach Gimel that the daughter of Rabbi Akiva took Ben Azai. So he's a son-in-law of Rabbi Akiva. So now this is really? So forget, besides the fact that it's Rabbi Akiva, it's your own father-in-law. The bald one? Kireach. And that's why Tosfos argues with Rashi. Tosfos says he was referring to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. But the same question, if it's an embarrassing name, why Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? So some of Farshim say, interestingly, the Gemara says in Brachas, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was appointed leader when he was 18 years old. And he still didn't have, he had very little hair. And he asked his wife if he should do it. And his wife said, yeah. So that's what Karcha was a compliment, that he was so young, and yet he was nominated to be the Nasi. So it's not embarrassing. But Rashi says, Kireach is Rabbi Akiva. And remember, it's the same name like Kairach. So suddenly Rabbi Akiva is called by the name of Kairach. So there's a connection between the two. And it's all connected to baldness and machlokes and separateness. So let's get to the explanation. Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach. The Gemara says, and it's your next source, Menachos Daf Chavtes, Eila told us Hashemayim va'aretz bihiborim, al tikra bihiborim, ela behei borim, have oimer oilam azeh behei. The pasuk says in Parshas Bereshis, this is the story of heaven and earth when they were created. Bihiborim. Say Chazal, bihiborim is a combination of two words. Behei borim. Hashem created this world with a hey, the letter hey. In fact, Olam Haba, it says, was created with the yud, and Olam Haza was created with the letter hey. Kibeka, that's why it says, Kibeka Hashem Tzur Olamim. Yud K is the rock of the world, yud is Olam Haba, and hey is Olam Haza. What's the connection? Gemara goes on to discuss the uniqueness of hey, which we'll be exploring. But somehow our world is defined by a hey. If you take the letters Kairach, Kuf, Reish, Ches, you'll see they're all similar to the Hey with a distortion. Kairach, Kuf, Reish, Ches are all variations for the Hey, but different. Let's see all three. And I put here the letters so you could see the picture. You see Hey? What's the uniqueness of a Hey? If I would ask you to describe the shape of the Hey, it's clear. The hay has a roof on top, which is horizontal. You see it in the source sheets. The roof is horizontal. Then it has a leg extending from the roof, a right leg that's vertical. It also has a left leg that's also vertical, but the left leg is disconnected from the roof on the top. So there's a gap between the roof and the left leg. There's no gap between the roof and the right leg. So we have three lines. A vertical line, a roof, a right line which is connected to the roof, and then a third left line which is also vertical and it's disconnected from the roof. That's hay. Now take a look at Kairach, Kuf Reish Ches. Take a look at the Kuf. The Kuf also has a roof on top. The Kuf also has a vertical line coming down on the right in a diagonal shape, and it also has a vertical line coming down on the left. And it's also separated on the top, but the left one goes down much longer than the hay. By the hay, the left leg ends where the right leg ends. They're proportionate. By the kuf, it's precisely disproportionate. In halachic language, it's called lamata min ashura. The left leg of the kuf goes down below the line. When you're writing and you have a sirtut, you have lines, the kuf comes down below the line. The hay never. The hay remains balanced, proportionate. Let's take a look at reish. What does reish have similar to the hay? Oh, it has a roof on top. It has a vertical line coming down on the right. What happened to the left one? Disappeared. Delete. Boom. Let's take a ches. A ches is the most similar, actually. In fact, it's easy to make an error between a ches and an hay. But what's the uniqueness of a ches? A ches has a roof on the top. It has two vertical lines extending from the roof on the right and on the left. But in the ches, there's no gap. In the ches, there's absolutely no gap. The left line is connected to the roof just like the right line. There's two terms we all know very well. They're exactly the same words. Mamish the same with a tiny difference. And yet, if I eat one rather than the other one, there's a spiritual death sentence. And I'm talking about the word chametz, matzah. These words are fascinating because they're identical. Mem tzadik, you have in chametz. Mem tzadik, you have in matzah. What's the difference between chametz and matzah? Ches and hay. In matzah, it's mem tzadik hay. In chametz, it's ches mem tzadik. Which, of course, from a physical point of view, makes a lot of sense because matzah and chametz are basically identical. In other words, the easiest thing, what's the easiest thing to become chametz? Matzah. Because if you just leave it a little longer, it becomes chametz. It's hard for a carrot to become chametz. But matzah is essentially on the way to fermenting. It's going to become chametz. So what's the whole difference between matzah and chametz? And on Pesach, if I eat chametz on Pesach, it's an isur kares. It's a very serious damage for the soul and the Jewish body. It's the difference of a hay and a ches. That little tiny gap on top makes the difference between ches and hay. Now, what does all this mean? If hay is the letter with which Hashem created this world, and when he initially created the world, there was a split between the higher and the lower. There was a machlokes that started on Monday, and Matan Torah healed the split of Monday. Matan Torah healed the world. Yom HaShlishi, that's why it says Kitov twice. In fact, the Gemara says on Shabbos that till Matan Torah, the world was trembling. Eretz Yara, the earth was in fear. It didn't feel stable. It didn't feel confident. And it was Matan Torah in the third millennium which made peace and stability. That's why it's called the sixth day of creation is called Yom HaShishi. Hashishi, which represents the sixth day of Sivan, which is Matan Torah. So that means that the hay with which Olam Haza was created, it became complete through Matan Torah, which was on the third day of creation, the third millennium. Kairach takes the hay and he distorts it in three ways. Either he turns it into a kuf, either he turns it into a reish, or he turns it into a ches. What does all of this mean? Like everything in Torah, there's layers and layers and layers, and this also is expressed in many layers. It says in Svarim, the three lines of the hay represent machshava, dibur, and ma'isa. Thought, speech, and action. The line on the top, which is the inner life of a person, my thoughts, and everything that my thoughts include. It includes my inner values and my thoughts. Nobody knows anybody else's thoughts. Nobody knows anybody's inner world until they don't talk. The second line that comes down from Shava is Dibur. Why does this come down? Because that's what communication is. As long as I'm in the world of thought, I'm in my own world. I'm up there. Dibur is my connection already with others. But it's still me talking to you. It's me communicating my feelings, my thoughts, my experiences, my emotions, whatever you're talking about, my ideas, my perspectives, my worries, my concerns, my joys, my hopes, my dreams, etc. So that's the line coming down. Why is that line connected to the source? Because Dibur is an expression of machshava. My words, hopefully, express my thoughts. We're talking about authentic words, so it's a continuum of me. I'm sharing me. That's what real communication is. What's a real conversation? Sharing what's happening inside of me. That's what real talk is. When you say people are having an authentic conversation, means I'm communicating to myself and to others what is happening inside of me, either my thoughts, my dreams, my feelings, my emotions. There's the third line. The third line of the hay is Maisa. That's the world of action. The world of action is the way we affect things outside of us to the point that it becomes disconnected from us. Because when I speak, the moment I stop talking, the words are gone. But with action, I can do an action, and the action can live on for hundreds of years. The action can live on for thousands of years. The action lives on outside of me and independent of me. That's the power of action. Once you do something, it's done. Now, words also have that power. Once I say something, I said it. But the words themselves cease. The words themselves cease. Maisa has an independent reality. Even if I build a table, this action remains an action. That's what Maisa is. So those are the three lines, Machshava, Dibur, Maisa. Now let's understand what this means within a person and within relationships. So we have here the hay, and the structure of the hay is so important to the fact that we say that's why Hashem created the world. What does it mean Hashem created the world with the hay? The ultimate string theory, the vibration beneath our world is the letter hay. So to live in alignment with the nature of reality means I'm cognizant and respectful of the structure of hay. There are three components: the machshava and the dibur and the ma'isa. Let's describe what this means in a relationship. The third leg represents me coming out of myself and impacting somebody who's outside of me. So the first two lines are connected. This is still me inside of me. And the third line begins real communication and connectivity with somebody outside of me. And that's why there's a gap, there's a disconnect. Because you are not me, I am not you. So when we begin, anybody begins this connection. Say a husband with a wife with a husband, parents with children, people with strangers, with friends. But the third letter represents that connection with somebody who is not me, somebody who's outside of me. There's a space in between. I'm talking to somebody, right? There's a space. Interesting thing. In the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you had the two kruvim, the two cherubs, a male and a female, children. Hashem tells Moshe, I'm going to speak to you from between the two kruvim. In other words, it's the space between the male and the female, between the groom and the bride, between the husband and the wife, where the Shechina dwells. The Gemara says inside to Ish v'Isha zachu Shechina shruya beinehem. The Shechina doesn't dwell in the man. Shechina doesn't dwell in the woman. The Shechina dwells in the space between a husband and a wife. That space is sacred. That space is a very precious space. It's not him. It's not her. It's the space between them. That space can be easily contaminated by one or by the other or by both or somebody else who mixes into that space. That space has to be protected. That's the space between the kruvim. Now, the space in this hay between the left leg and the roof represents the space between people. Every relationship, there's a space because there's me and there's the other. There's the husband, there's the wife. There's a mother, there's a child. There's a friend, and there's a second friend. This hay can be distorted in three ways. I can go into kuf, I can go into reish, and I can go into ches. What does this mean? Kuf is fascinating. Kuf is, I go into this space, the kuf has a space, and I go and connect to the other, but you see, I fall down in the process. What does it mean I fall down in the process? I go down too low. I don't remain anchored in my own existence. Does it sometimes happen that sometimes in the name of a relationship, I give and give and give and give, and there's nobody left? I deplete my energy. Like they say, somebody who always says yes. If I don't know how to say no, I never know how to say yes either. What often happens is, you see in the hay, The left leg doesn't extend lower than the right leg. There's balance. That's like Tiferes, number 3. There's a harmony, there's balance. And we all understand this. Sometimes I want to give and I want to give, but I'm giving out of guilt, or I'm giving out of shame, or I'm giving out of fear. And at some point, I may do everything for you, but I come home like a shmata. And I resent it, depleted. I lost myself in the process. And there's no way I could continue giving that way. It becomes very superficial, because every time I'm giving, a part of me is dying. It's like the Hatzalah guy who's taking somebody to the hospital, and the passenger says, we don't have gas. He says, I don't have time to get gas. I got to take him to the hospital. You know the end of the story. The Hatzalah truck broke down. It couldn't continue. There was no gas and there was no hospital. I'm giving and giving and giving. I'm taking everybody to the hospital. I got no gas. There's no me in the process. Now, sometimes I'm encouraged. I have to be a martyr. I have to be a martyr. There obviously are emergency situations where a person needs to address an urgent situation. We all understand that. But we're talking about as a lifestyle. When I give, when I teach, when I connect, when I communicate, and I go out of my world, and I go into that space, and I go into the other world, great. But always remain connected to your inner core, to who you really are, to your authenticity. Just like if I'm connecting, and there's people, they'll I'll give an example about a theme I actually do know. Sometimes people teach and teach and teach and teach, but they're talking so much, they're not there anymore. So the words become detached from the person. So the words are not coming from your atzmiyus. They're not coming from the inner core. This is what the kuf represents. I go down and down and down to the point that there's a disconnect to me. It's not proportionate anymore. There's no balance anymore. If there's no continuum, this is true with parenting, it's true with teaching, it's true in friendships, and of course it's true in a marriage, in a relationship. That's where you could see it. You can, all of these, you could see it you could see it in a very blatant fashion. Sometimes it comes because the person doesn't have a core. And my giving becomes a compensation for the fact that I don't have a core. So instead of getting the love, I need the validation. So by getting your approval, I'm getting my validation. So I'm completely not giving from a place of inner self. And therefore, by definition, it's toxic because I'm not even giving myself. I don't even know who I am. Somebody told me the other day, he says, I don't want to get love from somebody who doesn't love themselves because it's going to be toxic. I don't want to get love from somebody who hates themselves. That's all they know what to give me. That love is also going to be a form of non-love. But sometimes maybe it's not even that. But what happens is I go into a place and I'm trying to project and I'm trying to connect. But I lost myself. I lost my core. I lost my connection. The line went down too much. It could be very tempting at times. But what's left? What's the price? There's a price to pay. They call it the cost of doing business as usual. Because there was no wholesomeness. It was not holistic. That pnimius, the pnimius, I have to remain anchored in my pnimius, connected. Then, right, you don't just invest in the eggs, you have to invest in the chicken. Then there's somebody to give. There's somebody who can give more. And what I'm giving is of a different quality. It's not about selfishness. Not just about selfishness. It's actually about love, about connection. Think about a channel of electricity. There's a plug. Let's say I'm a plug. And we're all plugs. Everybody's plugged in to a certain source of divine energy. Every neshama is plugged in. Right? Now, what happens if the plug is not reaching the person it has to reach? It's not reaching. So somebody says, no problem. Pull the plug till it reaches the person. So you pull the plug. You know what the problem? You got nothing to give. I'm unplugged. There's no electricity. No, but I brought it all the way to him. An extension cord? Good. We like extension cords. But if you pull out the plug, you're not helping the other person. You're actually interrupting your own flow, and therefore you're not becoming a conduit. So the kuf, when the plug gets pulled down too low, too much, I'm not a channel for what I can give. You understand what I'm saying? It's not about being selfish. The plug is not selfish. I must be plugged in to my source, to my shayrish, to my neshama, to my truth, which is Hashem's energy coming through me. And that's what I want to bring to people. Always. And if I just pull the plug because you have to get there, there's no electricity. I'm not even giving anything. So now I have to make believe I'm giving something. So I have to create counterfeit electricity. That's a tragic situation. It becomes a mouthpiece rather than something authentic and real. Now there's the opposite, reish. You know what reish is? Reish is everybody gets me exhausted, and therefore you just cut off the third leg. I retreat into my cocoon. I go into an attic. Bye-bye world, bye-bye. I cut off relationships. That's the second distortion of hay. You see, the reish is a response to the kuf. I don't want to lose my plug. So what do? I just stay in the wall and I don't connect. I disconnect. You have it also in neuroscience. Sometimes you have, fight and you have flight. Sometimes I'm too much out there. And so much I just run away from everything. I disassociate, I disconnect. It's too painful. But it's the same concept. I can't remain present in the relationship. I can't remain present in the reality. So either I go boom, I attack, or I run away. But these are all variations of similar challenges. So in the kuf, the plug went so far that it got disconnected. People who are artists and performers know this challenge. Hopefully, not all of them know, but need to know this challenge very well. Because when somebody is on stage, right, and they're getting accolades from people, it's very easy to start living off that. That becomes my oxygen. That's why so many artists, especially in the secular world, their marriages don't last. Why not? The guy is standing on stage, 50,000 people are worshiping him. They're telling him that he's the closest thing to God that ever existed, maybe even better. The concert is over. The lights are gone. He goes into a taxi, goes home. What do you think happens when he gets home? His wife says, take out the garbage. Why are you home so late? And he's thinking, I don't know, 50,000 people just worshiped me. Do I need this? What do I need this for? So he disconnects. He doesn't realize his wife is trying to help him remain normal and human. It's the only real relationship. It's very hard for him because he's getting his oxygen from the people. You understand? That's the kuf. Kuf is klipa. Kuf stands for klipa. Kuf is, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. You detached from your source. You're not getting oxygen from your source. You're getting oxygen from other places. It's compensating your source. It's a shell. It's a husk. That's what klipa is. It's a shell. It's a husk. It covers up. You're not davuk. It's great to go out. We like the hay. We like the third leg. But it needs to be an outgrowth of your inner core that remains connected in your own inner core, and it's not created by the outside. So the reish is the opposite response. I don't need all this. I'll just disconnect because I want to be authentic. You would think reish is a beautiful thing. It's not, because it's abandoning the calling of my soul. I am a plug. I do have energy. I am a transmitter. I am an ambassador of love, light, hope, and healing and redemptive consciousness. The soul pre-birth was detached from the world, but the soul did come down to have an impact, to connect, to become a source of love and inspiration, each one in their own way. Now you have the ches. So the kuf I get, the reish I get. What's the issue with the ches? The ches is a very subtle guy. Ches is a sinister guy. What does the Ches say? The Ches says, oh, I'm just like the hay, right? The left leg is connected to the roof. There's no space in between. That means my connection to the other is a direct extension from me. I don't respect the space. You see what the Ches does? The Ches does not respect the space in between me and the other. A simple example. I'm talking to somebody. I'm spending time with them. Only one issue. I'm not talking to them about what they're interested. I'm just talking about what I'm interested. Somebody is talking to me, sharing with me. I'm completely not attuned. I'm just giving you advice and more advice and more advice and more advice and more advice. I'm giving and giving and giving, but completely on my terms. Sometimes we do this even with our most loved souls in the world. We want so much for them, but I stop respecting you as a separate person. I know what's best for you as long as you're connected to me, like we spoke a few weeks ago, the Mishnah, Ishis re'eyu chayim bloi. One person swallows up the other person alive. We explain what does that mean? I don't want to kill you. I want you to live inside of me. Inside of me, you can live, no problem. There's no attunement, emotional attunement, and practical attunement to the reality of the other. There's an expression in Tehillim, Ashrei maskil el dol. Fortunate is the person who is perceptive regarding the poor person. Why do I have to be perceptive? Just give the money. The Satmar Rebbe, Rabbeinu Yoel, Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, had a Zatzal, he had a Gabba, his name was Rabbi Yosel Ashkenazi. So he once shared a story. Satmar Rebbe was a very big Baal Tzedakah. He used to distribute tremendous amounts of tzedakah. A man came to him, not from his followers or disciples, just a stranger, a Jew came to him, to the Satmar Rebbe, and he said he needs money for a wedding. This was in the late 1950s or the early 1960s. How much do you need from me? So he says, I want $500, which in the 1950s was like $5,000. It was a nice contribution for a wedding. Especially if we're not going to have the bar and the Viennese table and the best flowers in New York. So the Satmar Rebbe tells Yosel Ashkenazi, the Satmar Rebbe goes out, takes out $400 and gives it to him. The man is so happy. He got $400, somebody he doesn't know. Almost everything, right? He asked for $5, he got $4, he left. Rabbi Yosel Ashkenazi turns to the Satmar Rebbe and says, can I ask you a question? He says, sure. He says, I don't understand. If you wanted to do what he asked for, why didn't you give him $5? And if not, why $4? So Satmar Rebbe said, if I would have given him $500, he would have left this house miserable. He would have said to himself, I'm such an idiot. I am such a moron. This Rebbe gives whatever you ask for. I should have asked him for $20,000. What a shite I am. And I would have been able to buy a house and buy a second house. Remember in those days for $20,000, you could buy a few nice houses in Borough Park. And everyone regrets why they didn't, right? Anybody over a certain age, they walk by, this house was for sale in 1968 for $26,000, and that lowlife bought it. Right? Everybody, if you're lower a certain age, you don't know, but if you're a certain age, you understand the joke very well. Huh? Whether you're walking in Lakewood or in Muncie or in Crown Heights or in Borough Park or in Williamsburg, or whatever it is, that house. And now it's like $4 million. You can't even get the basement. Maybe the basement, they'll rent you out. So he says he would have left this house miserable. I gave him $400. He went away a happy person.
Please, when you get a chance, you go watch these videos of the rabbi. And I tell you, I promise you, if you've never read a Hebrew word in your life, if it's in your blood, you will understand everything he's saying as if you were taught Hebrew language or whatever Hebrew is. Whatever it means that the Rothschilds coded up to keep people asleep and all that good stuff. He's one of the sages for the, that's why he knows so much. Them Dr. Jacobson's days, I will talk about them later. I just came and I'm enjoying, I'm literally enjoying listening to the rabbi. I'm learning so much. Now, let me tell y'all about the baldness. It is a genetic baldness, not no, what's her name? Fake self. What's the girl name? Will Smith wife. What's her name? Jada. She pretending, huh? But there is a baldness, a genetic baldness in my lineage. I don't know about everybody else's. That the women, I'm so, I'm so, like, I don't want to be here to see that either. We bald like monks. My brother, his baldness is hereditary from my grandmother them side. The ones I told y'all are old bite. 1929 in the Library of Congress. We bald like monks, huh? It looked just like how the monks attempted to make their hair look like they cut their hair to look like that. We bald like that naturally. So maybe, that's some people could pick that up, some men, and be like, nah, I don't want to be around her in her old age, balding like that. Can a dummy greater light? I'm getting off of here and spend some time. But my grandson done came. He said, that's enough. That's enough. All right. I'll be back later.